Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day so far. So today's video is going to be all about my favorite eyeshadow palettes. I thought I would go ahead and narrow it down to my top 10 and share them with you guys. I have a good mix of colorful palettes and neutral palettes, and then some of them are more affordable and some of them are a little bit more expensive, but I feel like no matter what you're looking for in an eyeshadow palette, I've got you covered in this video. Eyeshadow palettes are like my favorite makeup product. I honestly do not need another palette, but I cannot get enough of them. It's always fun trying new ones, and I feel like brands have been killing it lately with the new palettes that they've been releasing. So if you guys do have a favorite that I don't mention in this video, please let me know in the comments below so I can check it out. I also thought this would be the perfect time to do a little giveaway. So I am giving away 3 eyeshadow palettes: the Urban Decay Naked palette, which was one of my first high-end palettes ever, the Urban Decay Naked 2 palette, which is just as amazing, and the Urban Decay Naked 3, which is one of my absolute favorites. So I'm giving away all 3 of these palettes to one person. I was going to split it up and give them away separately, but I feel like they work really well together as well as on their own. So I really wanted one person to be able to enjoy them, and I thought it would be so much fun for that person to get them in the mail and start using them. So I cannot wait for one of you guys to win this giveaway. If you are interested in entering, I'll put all of the information in the description box below, so you guys can check that for more info, but it's going to be super simple. I just wanted to say thank you to you guys, and I have these awesome palettes from Urban Decay, so I thought I would go ahead and share them with you. Okay, let's jump into it. So my first favorite is the Kat Von D Shade and Light Eye Contour Palette. I don't know why it took me so long to get my hands on this palette. It is one of the most beautiful palettes that I own, and it's one of the most practical. The packaging on the outside is beautiful. It has like this raised lettering on it, but inside the palette it has a bunch of different neutral eyeshadows. I really like the way this palette is set up because you have 3 different quads. So you have a warm toned quad, a cool toned quad, and then also a neutral quad. So if you don't know where to start or you don't know what colors to pair together, you have a really good idea just when you look at the palette. All of the shadows in this palette are matte neutrals, which is amazing because they're great for obviously contouring your eyes, but I think they just come in handy. I'm a big fan of shimmer shadows, but I always use matte shadows every single day to kind of carve out my crease, highlight my brow bone, and I feel like they are just an essential to have in your collection. I like the formula of these shadows because they are very blendable, very smooth. They don't kick up a lot of extra powder when you apply them on your face. You don't get a lot of fallout, but they just blend beautifully into the skin. They're very pigmented. They're so easy to work with. It is the best matte neutral eyeshadow palette on the market in my opinion. I just think the quality is there, the colors are there, and it definitely has become one of my staples. So thank you to those of you that have recommended this to me for so long. I finally got my hands on it, and I just regret that it took me so long. The Anastasia Modern Renaissance palette is again one of those palettes that took me forever to get my hands on, and I do not know why, because it is one of the highest quality eyeshadow palettes that I personally own in my collection. The shadows themselves are beautiful, they're blendable, they're smooth and buttery, and the colors are really beautiful. It's kind of hard these days to create a unique eyeshadow palette, I feel like, because there are so many palettes out there that it's kind of like everything's been done, but I feel like the colors in this palette are really beautiful and unique. They work well together, they work well on their own, and they're a little bit different than any of the other colors that I have in other palettes. If you are a fan of warm tone shadows or you like just beautiful mauves or reds, this palette is going to be ideal for you. I know they are coming out with a second palette or like a sister palette, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. I almost don't care what colors are in that palette because the formula is so good. So if you're looking for an easy to work with formula that just blends beautifully, that's super pigmented, my only complaint is that the packaging is not my favorite. I'm generally very careful with my products, and I don't have a lot of like super messy makeup products just because I like to keep them neat and clean, but this one makes it a little bit difficult. It looks really pretty, but this velvety material gets very dirty very easily. Otherwise, I definitely recommend it. I think it's an amazing palette. If you guys are looking for something along the same lines, but you want to spend a little bit less, I definitely recommend the Makeup Revolution eyeshadow palette. This one is their Neutrals versus Neutrals palette. First of all, it's affordable, which is great. It does come with a dual-ended eyeshadow brush. I forgot to mention the Modern Renaissance palette does as well, but this is what the brush looks like. It has a flat end and then also a fluffy end. The palette itself comes with so many different shadows. So you have a good mix of neutral shadows and then a few pops of color. There are a lot of warm tone shadows, but also some cool tone shadows as well. When I saw swatches of this palette online, I knew that I had to have it. This palette is so beautiful, and I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I'll look at a palette palette and I'll be like, yeah, it's pretty, but I don't know if I need it. And then I'll see swatches or I'll see, you know, somebody using it for an eye look and I know that I have to have it. That's how I felt with this one. It comes with a lot of neutrals and I have a lot of neutrals in my collection, but there are a few shades in here that are super unique. I feel like you can get so many complete eyeshadow looks with this palette alone, which is really nice. So you don't have to reach into other palettes to get a full look. One of my favorite shadows in this palette is this really beautiful like pink toned red, and then also this dark shade here as well. I like to use that to darken up the outer corner, but this one is one of my favorites. I feel like I do have to work a little bit to get the matte shadows to blend really well, but in my opinion, it's totally worth it. So this one is the Tarte Cosmetics Make Believe in Yourself Eye and Cheek palette. Of course, the packaging is really beautiful, just like all of the other Tarte palettes. It comes with like this really beautiful blue and pink and purple design on the front, and then the case itself is a gold. You open it up, it has a gorgeous white highlight right in the middle that you can use on your face or on your eyes, and then it has a good mix of neutral and colorful shimmer shadows. You do get one matte neutral eyeshadow, which isn't my favorite. You can obviously use it as a transition or in the crease. I kind of just wish they put another shimmer shadow in there, but I get why they put it in there. The colorful shadows in this palette are my favorite. I wear them all the time, all over the lid. Sometimes I'll blend a colorful shadow into the crease, like a matte shadow, and then apply one of these on the lid. I think that this palette is a great way to play with color. If you tend to be a neutral eyeshadow fan, but you want a pop of color once in a while, grab this palette because it will make it so much fun for you. It does come with some neutral shimmer shadows as well, which look beautiful all over the lid. And then the colorful shadows are really bright and fun, but they're not too intense. It's not like a bright cobalt blue or like a super in your face lime green. They are bright colors, but because they are so shimmery and beautiful on the eyes, they just reflect light in the most beautiful way and they look amazing. Again, I do recommend going in with your fingers. They don't work as well with a brush, but this palette is a must-have in my collection. If you are a colorful eyeshadow fan, make sure you grab it because you will not want to miss out on it. The formula is amazing, the colors are beautiful, and I hope that they come out with more palettes like this because it is so good. So this one is their TARTEIST Pro palette. I've had this one for a while and I actually did a review on my channel, so if you guys want to check it out, I'll link it in the description box below. But this one is an Amazonian clay palette, so the shadows in my opinion are a little bit more dry, which actually works really well if you have oily eyelids. The great part about this palette is that it comes with 16 different matte shadows and then also 4 shimmer shadows. So I'll usually go in with the matte shadows as transition colors in my crease, in my outer corner, and then I'll go in with the Make Believe in Yourself palette for a shimmer shadow. The shimmer shadows in this palette aren't super promising. I kind of wanted them to be what these shadows were. This palette came out afterwards, so I didn't even know what I was missing out on, but they work okay. They're not the most amazing. I'll usually have to wet my brush if I go in with them. The matte shadows, on the other hand, are really nice. Again, I feel like you kind of have to work a little bit to blend them. Not as hard as maybe like the Makeup Revolution palette, but definitely a little bit harder than the Kat Von D palette or the Anastasia Modern Renaissance palette. It's just a different formula. They're a little bit more dry because they are made with that Amazonian clay, so in my opinion, they tend to stay in place a little bit longer. There are some beautiful colors in this palette, and when I first looked at it, I wasn't sure that I was going to wear it a whole lot because at the time, I wasn't really into colorful shadows. But there are actually so many different neutral shadows in this palette, and it kind of helps you add color in a very subtle way. If I had to choose between this one and the Anastasia Modern Renaissance or the Kat Von D, I would definitely go with one of those over this palette. But I do think if you just want some really pretty neutrals or the colors in this palette appeal to you, I would recommend grabbing it because I've had good luck with it. I am a huge fan of the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette. I think this might be my favorite Too Faced palette, but it's hard to say because I do like the chocolate bar palette as well. I do have a Get Ready With Me on my channel using this if you guys want to check it out, but I think this palette is beautiful. The shadows in the palette are really gorgeous. It comes with a good mix of matte shadows and shimmer shadows, and you have some neutrals but also some pops of color. There are some peachy toned shadows in here, but a lot of the colors are not peach toned, but they complement peach shades really well. But definitely don't let that hold you back from checking it out. If you are a neutral eyeshadow fan, you're definitely going to love this palette. There are a few pops of color, but for the most part, part it has a neutral tone. I love the matte shadows in this palette because they're blendable, but they're not overly pigmented. Don't get me wrong, I love the Kat Von D palette, I love the Modern Renaissance palette, but sometimes you want a shadow that's going to be a little bit less pigmented, because if you put a little bit too much in your eye, it's so much effort to blend it out if it's like so super pigmented. For me personally, when it comes to like a quick, easy look, I don't want a shadow that's overly pigmented. I just want something that performs really well. So I feel like the pigmentation is good, but it's not over the top, and the blendability is the same way. They're not extremely soft shadows, so you do have to blend them a little bit longer, but they work and perform really well in my opinion. The shimmer shadows work great on their own. You don't have to wet your brush, you don't have to use your finger. You can do both of those, but they just perform well using a regular brush, which I feel like is rare these days. A lot of shimmer shadows need like a little extra work, but I feel like these are really nice quality. I love it because it smells like peaches, but I know that some people are not a fan of the scent. So if you are sensitive to scented palettes, keep that in mind when it comes to the Too Faced palettes, because they usually have a pretty strong scent. I really like the Too Faced chocolate bar palettes. I think they are so beautiful, and I love the original and the semi-sweet version. So if the shadows in one of those palettes appeal to you more, I would definitely recommend them. I think the quality is really great, but my favorite is the Too Faced chocolate bonbons palette. I feel like this one is not most people's favorites, and I didn't think it was going to be my favorite. I actually held off on getting it for a little while after it was released just because the colors didn't really appeal to me. But I'm glad I got it because I actually ended up reaching for this one more so than the other two. The shadows in this palette are primarily cool toned, but there are a few warm shadows. And again, this one has a mix of matte and shimmer, mostly neutral, but again, a few pops of color. In my opinion, all of the chocolate bar palettes kind of perform similarly, so I wouldn't say that the formula is too much different from the other two, but there are a lot of beautiful browns and cool toned colors in this palette. So if you are a cool toned fan, this might really appeal to you. I think the shadows are really blendable, really gorgeous. I don't really find a huge difference between the chocolate bar palettes and the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette as far as formula goes, so pretty much everything I said about this palette is true of this palette. It just comes with different colors. So I love these. I think they're just fun to have. Of course, these ones do smell like chocolate, which is a plus if you're a fan of that, and it just has some really beautiful colors in it. If you guys have been around my channel for a while, it is no surprise that I love e.l.f. Cosmetics. They are one of my favorite drugstore brands. I think their products are amazing, they're super affordable, and they are constantly coming out with new products. They have a ton of different eyeshadow palettes, so it kind of is just like personal preference when you are choosing which colors work well for you. But my personal favorite is the Mad for Matte 2 palette. So this one comes with 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 different matte eyeshadows, and they do have an original version, so that one is really great as well, but the colors in this one appeal to me so much more. I actually mentioned how a lot of the shades in this palette are a dupe for the TARTEIST Pro palette, so if you're interested in that palette but you don't want to spend that much money, try grabbing this one. It has a lot of really beautiful warm shadows that are so pretty in the crease as transition colors all over the lid, and they perform really well on the eyes. They're very blendable, very pigmented, but at the same time, a lot of the colors are more on the subtle side, so I think they make great highlights, they make great transition shades, and they're kind of like a reliable matte shadow formula that's not anything too intense or too pigmented, but they're still really blendable and nice to have. This next palette has been one of my favorites for a while. It's from Buxom Cosmetics, and it is the Dolly's Wild Side palette. So this palette has been in my collection for a few years at this point, and I always reach for it. The packaging is really beautiful. You open it up, and it comes with 2 different matte shadows and 4 shimmer shadows. These palettes are actually customizable. You can build your own Buxom palettes, which I did do, but for some reason I don't reach for that palette as much as I do for this one. So the inside actually slides out, and you can pop new shadows in and out of this, which is kind of nice because if you do run out of one, or if you don't like one of the shadows, you can replace it with your own shadow. But I like all the colors that come in this palette. If you guys are looking for like a pink or rosy tinted palette, I would definitely recommend this one. The 2 crease shades have kind of like a pink undertone to them, and then this antique gold color looks so pretty combined with any of the other shadows in this palette. You do get a pop of purple, which I don't reach for as often, but I feel like these 5 shadows are definitely staples in my collection. They can create some really beautiful, easy to wear neutral eyeshadow looks, and then you can kind of, you know, make it a little bit more fun with this purple as well. So I definitely recommend this one. Okay guys, the last thing I want to talk about is kind of me cheating a little bit because it's not technically an eyeshadow palette. They are eyeshadow singles, but I put them together to form my perfect palette. So they are from ColourPop. ColourPop sells single pressed powder shadows for $5 each, and they also sell eyeshadow palettes available on the website. So you can buy like one of their pre-made palettes, or you can purchase an empty palette and put your own shadows inside. This actual palette is a MAC palette that I had in my collection from a while ago, but the shadows inside the palette are from ColourPop. But I just kind of put all of my favorite shadows together in one palette. So I have 2 highlight shades, 3 transition colors. This one sometimes I use as a transition as well. 3 lid shadows, and then the rest of the shadows I'll use in the crease. And you can create so many different eyeshadow looks using just the shadows in this palette. They perform beautifully. The matte shadows are very blendable, very smooth and pigmented, and I think they are just gorgeous. I definitely recommend them. The nice part is that they have so many colors available on the website, and they're constantly coming out with new colors. And ColourPop will usually release like really trendy shades, like really bold, fun colors. So even if you can't find them in other eyeshadow palettes or other brands, check ColourPop's website because you'll be able to find some great options. Okay guys, so that's everything I have for you today. I just wanted to go ahead and share my favorite palettes with you. I want to hear from you guys, so make sure you let me know in the comments below what your favorite palettes are so I can check them out. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.